2, 1. What's going on, everybody? I'm John, and this is the Catchup. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're man, we were tired of keeping people waiting, man. So okay. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. So before we jump into part 2 of the season of love, right? Which I know y'all like that intro I put in there last week. It was wild. But anyway, before we get into that, I want to touch on a few things. First of all, be sure to follow us on Facebook. We're live streaming right now, and I've actually had some technical difficulties that, God willing, I can edit out before you watch the video. But the good thing about this Facebook live stream option is that we can talk in real time with you as we talk about whatever topics we're discussing this week. It allows us to have a real time conversation and get to know our listeners better, create that connection. And just expand the discussion from where we would normally take it, right? And so we want to plug that Instagram as well. We're active on there. You'll know anytime a new episode comes out, and you'll get little snippets of what the episodes are about. And then check out our website, nosignalrocks.com/the-catchup-podcast. But it's linked in all of this is linked in the description of this episode. Or if you're watching on the live stream, that's linked down below as well. And then, our YouTube channel. We actually, once we get all of this figured out with this new technology, we're going to be uploading our live streams and so much more to our YouTube channel, including the Turo rental car Top Gear style challenge that we did. Dennis, you want to give an update on how that project's coming along?
It's coming. It took a little while for me to get all this stuff, and at the same time, it kind of slowed down because of the power outage. So,
right.
I'll say that it is coming along.
Well, good. You're good. You guys are going to really enjoy it. There's going to be comical. There's going to be some burnouts. There's going to be some racing. Legally, legally, but
within the legal.
Yeah, we don't want to get banned from Turo, but all of that, and leave us a rating and review as you listen to this podcast. Leave us a rating and review. Let us know how we're doing, what we can do to improve, or what you like. And let us know where we stand, so we can continue to grow and be heard by new and different people. Right, catch up with a whole new group. So yeah, man. Let's go ahead and jump into our discussion this week. Like I said, continuation, part 2, part deux, if you will, since it's romantic and stuff. Gotta put some French ass language with it. So tell me, man, like, what are you thinking? Where do you want to take this conversation now?
Where I want to take it? Well, I mean, I want to first go ahead and get your experience on relationships and stuff. Last episode we did like a semi deep dive, of what I've experienced, right?
Sure.
As we said last time, my relationship experience I feel like is a little unique to most people's. I only really dated 3 people, to be honest, and so I came at it with a whole different perspective than most, and so I kind of want to know your perspective on it, right? What did you go through, and what did you learn from those relationships? And, has it kind of molded you into the person that you are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Too, because I feel like each of those relationships that I went through, like, it showed me what I wanted more and more and more.
Absolutely.
Each of the time that I went into those relationships, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted until I got into that relationship and found out, oh, this isn't exactly what I wanted, right? Or I wish I could have this, or tweaking here and there. So,
well, you just remind me of something very interesting. This is from March of 2015. Okay, so almost 6 years ago. We'll hold it up here on the live stream. This is a list called Dream Girl. This is gonna be a fun trip down memory lane here. This is something that actually Dennison inspired me to do. I don't know. Should we jump into what I look for first? Probably not. Let's save that for the end, huh? Yeah, man. I don't really know where to begin. I've definitely had a lot of experience with dating. Um, both good and bad. Um, I don't know where really to begin with it. I mean, I dated people in high school and that kind of stuff. I don't know if I really view it to be that way where um I don't really view those relationships as adult relationships. It's kind of a thing where you're finding yourself. Um and that's not a bad thing, and it's not a diss on them either. They're all good people. But I'm friends with all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you get to real relationships, you get to a point of real relationships and you invest deeply. It's hard to have a friendship like that, right? Um, and you know who I'm talking about. Every time I come down to Texas, I hang with two or three people that I dated when I was in high school. But I mean, it was high school, and I don't think you catch me doing that now. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's absolutely shaped me, and every experience that you have does. But I think that when you give so much of yourself to someone or something, and then it ends, or it doesn't, regardless, it's a good thing. Because it transforms you, and if you play your cards right, you get molded into a better version of yourself.
True.
So, yeah, where do you want me to begin, man?
Let's start from the relationship that you felt was the most, like your first feeling of like a real relationship, if that makes any sense.
Okay. That would have been. I'm only laughing because Denison knows the answers to all these. That would have been my freshman year in college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I dated this girl that I met. I have a weird. I don't know if I should really admit this on the podcast, but in thinking back about it, I have a weird thing where it's like somebody's interested in that person, somebody that I know is interested in that person. So then I start talking to that person and then we become interested in each other. I don't know. That's happened to me a couple of times, but it happened here. Anyway, I dated this woman. We were young. We were 18, freshman year, like I said. But we had a really good connection. It was shortly after I met Denison. We formed this whole friend circle around each other. In fact, a guy we just had on just over a month ago, Matt Buchek, which was an incredible interview. He was friends with this girl, and here we are 7 years removed from me even been talking to him, and he was on our podcast. So, um, yeah, I think, I don't know where, I haven't thought about this relationship for a while, but I think this was like a coming of age relationship. It was my first long relationship. It was my first long term relationship. Um, the first I love yous and this and that and all that. Um, and that's heavy stuff. But to be fair, I was 18 and then 19, and I didn't really know how serious it was to say that. You know, not that it, like, freaks me out now to say that stuff, but it carries more of a weight than it did before. However, I did feel that way when it came to her. Um, and so, yeah, we had a really good connection. There was these are things I remember because, we're coming up on almost be a decade from when this relationship started, which is crazy. Um, but I think that there was a level of jealousy there that wouldn't be uncommon for someone who is in their late teens, early 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What type of jealousy?
well, so jealousy of other females. Um, and so I don't know. I guess I used to deny this, but I have sort of always been a flirt, I guess you could say. Um, And I don't really picture it from a perspective of meaning any harm, right? Um, and I don't think other people do either from the conversations that I've had. Uh, I guess if this were a female, you'd say, oh, she's just really friendly with a lot of people or whatever, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, maybe it was perceived that way, and I probably was worse about it when I was younger, right? Because testosterone and all that kind of stuff. But she would get jealous of other females that she had no business being jealous of. This girl was beautiful. She was sweet. She had a good sense of humor. People loved being around her. She was the type of person I could bring to any group gathering that we had, any event that we had, any bro time that we had, and she'd just like slide right in. And it was fine, you know? So, um, so that was really cool. And I didn't, man, thoughts are all over the place with this, but I didn't know how special that was. So I took that stuff for granted, you know? Um, so then when I would be approached by another female who may be interested or not, I wasn't quick to stiff arm that because I just didn't really realize the severity of the situation, and again, how significant it was to have what we had, especially at that young age. Now that's not what led to us breaking up. That was completely unrelated, to be quite honest. Matter of fact, I don't know if this is fair to say, but I mean, if I had decided to convert to Catholicism, which is really what brought this down, people who've listened to this for a while, they know I serve at my church, and I've served at my church. I've actually played guitar at church now for 10 years, which is wild. So I've always been very involved in it, and yes, I play guitar all the time, but the first place I did was at my church. So that shows you where my priorities have been. And just having that moment of realizing, you can have every single ingredient that you need to have a good relationship, right? You can have every single one. And if there's one thing, right, that hinders that, or is an issue, or is a something that changes the game, I guess you could say, that's all it takes. And so that, I guess what I mean by coming of age is realizing that, um, things aren't always as perfect as they seem. Um, Realizing the severity of being involved in somebody else's life that you didn't grow up with to that degree, you know, um, things along those lines. You know what I mean? So, it was a good relationship, and it just ended terribly. It ended shortly before I moved up here. And then we did a little long distance getting back together thing. And oddly enough, in some ways, that was actually better than where we had left our relationship,
Okay.
And it's funny because, well, you know why it's funny.
So I'm gonna ask this. So, do you feel like with that relationship? Because I know you said that it was something else that kind of ended that relationship or whatever. But do you feel that if you wouldn't have moved, um, would you have stayed in that relationship, or was it kind of already dead at that point by the time you were getting ready to leave?
I don't know. I say I don't know because it was 7 years ago. So I can't really remember exactly how I felt, but to tell the truth, I may not have ended the relationship in that moment. Maybe. I don't know. I'm basing that off my track record, which we can get into later. But I may not have ended the relationship in that moment, but I would have ended the relationship. The problems there were undeniable. The thing to me about that was, everybody gets a little jealous from time to time, I think. But it's to the degree of that jealousy that's important. And when you have, I was with her at that point for a year and a half. We dated total for just about 2 years. Um, I've been with her for about a year and a half at that point. I think we'd broken up twice by that point already, or well, no, that was the second time. Um, and I just thought, well, if you can't trust me after all that we've been through, and that's a thing. I mean, that's such a thing with relationships, trust. I mean, you gotta have it. You gotta have two things to me in my mind that form any relationship, romantic or otherwise, is trust and communication. If you don't have those things, you might as well call it quits. And when I don't have those things, it's very hard for me, and when I'm accused of not having those things, it's very hard for me because, as you can tell, I just put such a precedent on that. um but I mean, that was really the issue, but I kind of saw there were some things that happened where it made me see the writing on the wall, you know um man, should I tell the story about where I got threatened to get shot?
No, man, we're good.
You don't think so?
We'll save that for another day.
Okay, well, just know her mom threatened to shoot me. I I'm looking dead at the camera. I didn't do anything wrong. So, um, but anyway, there were just certain things that happened like that, and with the religious differences and stuff. I actually did a lot of research. I actually am very well versed. Yeah, Christina, it was crazy. I apparently Dennison doesn't want me to get into this yet. Christina's jumping on the live stream. Man, I gotta get into it, man. All right, so I'll make it quick because I know we got a lot to touch on here. But essentially, it was her birthday. This is May of 2020, so we're both 20 years old. Wait, sorry, May. Sorry, dude. Way off. May of 2014. We were 20 years old. Dude, I think certain people listening to this would have been all sorts of confused. Yeah, so here's the very juicy story. So, we it was May of 2014. It was her birthday. And I had done this thing for her where I surprised her with, because she was the type, which I appreciated this about her. She was like, I don't need a whole party or anything extravagant and blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it for you anyway. But I was very strategic about it because it was a fun day, but it wasn't extravagant either. I mean, we went to a movie, I think, and we went bowling, something. And then her favorite restaurant was, I only remember this because it was one of my favorite too. Joe's Italian Bistro, right? That place is clean, man. Oh my gosh. I love it. Just a little hole in the wall Italian restaurant. And was taking her there. I mean, she was already excited about it. And then most of her friends, and then our mutual friends, you being one of them, Dennison, were in there. And so that was awesome. We had fun. And I thought, you know what? I forgot. Well, I didn't forget, but Amazon didn't have 2-day delivery back in those days, not quite to the degree that it does now. And so her gift that I got her got there that day. My parents were up in Wichita. It's weird how all this ties in. My parents were up in Wichita looking at houses at that point. Okay. So I went home. I'm telling this story because she's never going to watch it. So I'm realizing how crazy it is. So I went home and we grabbed the package and went inside. I kid you not, we were there maybe 3 minutes. I had no bad intentions. Even as a 20-year-old male, I had no bad intentions. Okay. And I mean, we were literally about to leave, and I hear this like banging on the door. Doorbell goes off. I'm like, what the heck? So I kind of like sneak around the corner, do one of these. Like that, And I'm like, I didn't see anybody. I didn't even see a car out front, which was weird. Well, long story short, her mom calls her and she's like, where are you? And she's like, John's house. And her mom starts cussing her out, man. Cussing her out. And it's like complete flip side because her mom used to buy me like I would go over there. They'd have the fridge because your boy used to drink a lot of crappy food, eat a lot of crappy food, drink a lot of crappy drinks. They had this thing stacked. The fridge would be stacked with like Oreos and Dr. Pepper cherries, right? Flip that around because she's cussing out her daughter and everything. And so I drive her home. They don't even want to talk to me. I tried to apologize. They're like, we don't want to hear it. And I drove home, you know. A couple days later, so anyway, I skipped a part. It was her mom that banged on the door. Her parents and my parents did not interact. I have to this day no idea how her parents knew that my parents were out of town. I don't know. It was I
Yeah, and how did she know where you lived?
yeah, I guess that's a good question too. I mean,
She might have followed you guys.
and that's what I'm saying because I can't remember if like the tracking software was as available now or back then as it is now for phones like that. But man, yes, I almost feel like she followed us. Because I didn't even say what our plans were. So anyway, I go over there a couple days later and I'm trying to apologize. And her mom ends up at the end accepting my apology, but not first without telling me, you know, don't ever disrespect my daughter that way. I just will have you know, and I'm paraphrasing here. She was like, I'm such a good shot. You could be anywhere in this house and I would get you. And she was like, I wouldn't shoot to kill. I would shoot to maim you so that way you remember it with how much it hurts. And I was like, what? And man, I'm not going to lie to you. I was still pretty innocent at 20 years old. And so I was just like, okay, yeah. I'd never been talked to that way before. And so I wasn't prepared. And it wasn't until after the conversation happened, she left, and it was just that girl and I was like, I am pissed off right now. You know? Now, I don't think I ever felt that type of rage in my life. I literally just gotten threatened. And again, same situation. So I had been dating her for over a year and a half at that point. And I'm thinking, you guys think just now I'm going to start acting like this? I'll never forget this. Her dad called me Eddie Haskell, right? There's a character from Leave It to Beaver. Character from Leave It to Beaver who I guess, you know, lied all the time and acted one way in front of adults, another way behind their back. I'm like, man, come on. You guys, I've spent so much time over at this house. You know me well enough. It was crazy, man. It was crazy. And things ensued after that. But that actually, you know, I think it kind of ended up being one of the factors because, um, you know, you marry into a family. You know what I mean?
That's true.
You do. So that was kind of the juicy story there. Per the request of Christina, thank you for bringing that out of us on the pod. But yeah, man, what'd you want me to go with that? Where'd you want me to go with that?
Well, so it's just kind of interesting. Looking at your first relationship that was like your eye opening, right? The first time that you got to a point where like just because I check all these boxes doesn't mean that this is going to be the person I'm going to be with for X amount of time or forever or whatever.
Yeah. And that was a tough thing. I actually want to interject that because I think this will come up later in the discussion. I think this will come up, but that was a really tough thing for me to get over. I know you remember that. But there was about, trying to think, there was about a 3-month window between us being broken up and us getting back together. You know, that was a tough one because I had a lot of feelings for it, and I just kept thinking, like, if it weren't for that one thing, we'd be together right now. You know what I mean? So anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, so from that relationship, right? Where was your momentum from there? Like, I guess where did you move? Because, what I really want to ask first before we can jump into your next one is in your mind, what was like the instant no goes at that point, right? What molded you at that point to say like, hey, my next relationship, I need this. because like we've already talked about, each relationship kind of shapes the person that you kind of pursue more, right?
Yeah. Funny enough, it kind of does fade into the next relationship, the next long term relationship. I dated
Mm-hmm.
a few girls that had similarities to uh, that first girl at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and during that time, I would say, probably the no goes. I hate to say it on the podcast and on the live stream. Um, but it's the same thing as in reverse. I avoid dating Catholic women, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that wasn't like a prejudice against them or anything, but it was so I didn't waste either of our times. I mean, I'm not Catholic, and like I said, I put in the research, and so to me, just to me, and to what I believe and how I was raised, I don't worship that way. I don't follow God that way. So I didn't want to waste anybody's time. So that was a definite no go there. Um, I think inadvertently, perhaps, I ended up looking for not that deep of relationships because I think part of what sparked the jealousy was how deep our relationship was. So that is to say, and this is something that you'll find with younger women and I assume men too. Um, but I think the closer we got, the more insecurity there was, right? Because we had opened ourselves up so much that we didn't want to get hurt again. Um, but for me, it was that, and it was the fact that she ended up dating and later marrying one of my best childhood friends, right? And they got together a month after we broke up the final time,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, it was interesting.
yeah, and they have an interesting story with that too. Man, we should get them on the podcast. I would love to know some of that.
So,
But
well, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I mean, yeah. So I kind of looked for not physical relationships by any stretch. I was very innocent at that time. Right? I'm dancing around these phrases right now. But just I don't know. I don't think I really had clarity of with what I was looking for. I wanted something that alluded to the closeness of a relationship like I had with her, but didn't have it, so I didn't get hurt. You know.
Okay,
Uh,
makes sense. Do you feel like you were kind of maybe mentally exhausted from your last relationship? So was that kind of like a big reason why, of course, everybody, you wait that allotted amount of time or whatever like that to heal. But do you feel like you were kind of more exhausted after being out of that relationship, and that was the reason why you didn't want to, or why you had a hard time kind of getting into more longer lasting relationships because you saw what happened from the last one?
yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see that. And really with that, what I did was I took that energy, and so we finally called it quits for in December of 2014. In February of 2015, I released my debut EP. And I think it was all that same month. Yeah. February 2015 was a big month. I released that debut EP. I got picked up by my current church to join the worship band. And I got an internship at my current job. So I first landed the internship there. So I did have a lot of pent up frustration, anger, sadness, but I used it. I turned that energy into, creating and progressing myself rather than focusing on uh, women. And I really don't think I dated another woman. I don't think I went out with another girl, at least multiple times. I didn't go out with another girl for a year, I think. Yeah. So now, don't get it twisted. We had a whole bunch of fun in between then with things like me coming down to Texas. Um, and old parties at Jose's um, party apartment, honestly, at UTA. Um, but yeah, I mean, I really did stay away for a while. It's really weird how this is kind of coming. I don't want to say it, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, I did. And to kind of jump to the next relationship because I'm trying to think. I mean, there were people that I dated off and on for a little while. I don't really remember much of 2016 from my dating life. It was like I ended the relationship with that girl I started dating at the end of 2015, and man, outside of that, I can't really think of much. Well, part of it was I was so busy. So my final semester of school, you have to prioritize, right, in dating, and you have to prioritize yourself in life. And I was prioritizing myself among all things at that point. So I was working full time. I was finishing my final semester of school, and I was writing for the school paper all at the same time. Um, and then graduated. And then right after I graduated, I was like, I'm free. I'm free. I bought $1,000 worth of recording gear, including this mic that you see on the live stream right there, as like a graduation gift to myself. And then I got moved to the overnight shift. And that was when I started working. That was when I started working on the morning show. So that really all factored into one thing. Funny enough, I think that into that year, I had an ex from Texas, like Georgia Strait would sing, come visit me up here. Um, I still to this day don't know what happened with that, so that's not even worth discussing. Um, but after that, still to this day, one of my best birthdays ever was when I turned 23, and I came down to Texas for my birthday. And the gatherings that we had, we became I'm pretty sure they know our names at Doty's now, which is like this weird sports bar club thing. It's in Allen. Man, a lot of stories came out of that, but I came back, and we had just been named number one in ratings for the morning show, and I guess we'd been off of that for a while, and so everybody wanted to go out and celebrate. And it was that night that I ended up meeting the next girl I dated. So the thing with her was, on the surface, and genuinely, this was a subconscious thing, or maybe not fully subconscious, but I wasn't overtly thinking about it. But she was like the anti version of my first long relationship, right? So that's the crazy thing about it, is like 2 years later, I'm making decisions based off of that previous relationship.
Well, I mean, that's how it works, man. Relationships shape us a lot. Even it's like subconsciously it does it, right? It's
Yeah.
Of course conscious. We know automatically what we don't like or what we don't want to happen or whatever like that. But then subconsciously or subconscious wise, you're also making like decisions back there that's saying like, hey, no, we don't want this, we don't want this, and it's kind of guiding you to the new person that you're going for.
Yeah. I think that's a key.
So it sounds like, or sorry, go ahead.
No. Finish what you're gonna say, man.
Well, I was just gonna say, it sounds like essentially you were, the impact of your first like real like aha relationship or whatever like that.
Yeah.
Had such a effect on you.
Yeah.
That it made you kind of want to steer so far away from that, right?
Yeah. Which was, again, young and naive of me. To think that, if I dated a tall, fit, redhead chick, I would go through the same exact thing that I just gone through, right? I mean, it's very naive. But I was still young at that time, and there's a lot of growth. I've been telling people this lately for a variety of reasons, but there's a lot of growth between 23 and 27, man. There just is. And the things that I've learned over the past 4 years, I would say, it's tough, but I would say maybe changed me more than any other 4-year period in my life, you know. And so anyway, yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's important stuff to consider too. I'm very bad about beating myself up about things. I think other people can do that enough for you, and you can just, you know, give them a one finger salute when they do. But um, I'm very bad about that, and so I can um, beat myself up about, how the relationship ended, how it went, all that. But overall, I think it's important to forgive yourself that for whatever happened in said relationship, and also just not hold on to what happened and let it influence your future, whether that's relationships or not. Past, don't let the past change who you are today. Learn from it, but don't let it, affect who you would normally be. And I think that's a thing for me that I continue to work on today. Um, but yeah, so anyway, and then the other thing is to be aware of it. Be aware of how your past influences your present, and just use that awareness, that knowledge, to make you a better person today, right? So, yeah, I mean, that next girl I dated, I don't know how much we want to go into that. That's the thing I've vaguely referenced throughout this uh, entire 2.5 years of this podcast, 2 years and 3 months of this podcast, as one of the darkest periods of my life. It's very tough, you know.
Well, yeah, it was so. We don't have to go into like full depth or whatever like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you through those same emotional experiences, but I guess what I do want to say is like, what did you learn from that one? And do you know? I guess trying to think. But it's of course it's what you learned from that one, but it
Yeah.
also how did that make you grow?
Oh.
Do you feel like that relationship made you grow a lot more than say any other relationship that you've had so far, or what?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So I just said, as you heard, that I was still young and naive at that point, and that took all the naivety away from me. That relationship
Mm-hmm.
did. Um. I didn't look at things with rose tinted glasses anymore. Um. Sunshines and rainbows. You know what I mean? Um. I'll tell you. You know, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder like midway through our relationship, and that's tough. I mean, I have the utmost sympathy for people who deal with that, um and gosh, I just can't. I mean, it hinges upon like split personality disorder, and other things like that, and I just feel for those people that deal with that. And she did, and I believe that she did, but there was also major insecurity there that actually stemmed from well before she was even diagnosed with that. And it led to extreme and severe manipulation, game playing, um, head games. I hit this crazy low point from that, and it just really, it taught me to guard my heart, you know. It taught me compassion and consideration for mental health issues. Um, Even still, which that took me a while to come to that conclusion, because there was such a level of hurt from this. Um, it was one of the factors that led to me moving back home. You know, um, not the main one. They were actually, it was a side factor for sure, but still it played a role. Um, the ending of that relationship, I should say. But it was also probably the main factor in me moving out to begin with. And that was a really tough pill to swallow too, because I didn't see it that way. Because again, I was young and naive at 23. And I thought, oh man, this is my life. I'm so excited to branch out there. And it was a level of manipulation. Um, so yeah, I learned a lot from it. I learned how to read people better, I think. Take things with a grain of salt, but I think it's hindered me in a way where I don't fully feel like I embrace experiences like I used to. I feel like there's always a caveat in the back of my mind, that this could go sideways any second, right? Um, and I know that sounds kind of silly to say, but and it's not like it's really a conscious thought, but ever since then, I don't feel like I've enjoyed life. I mean, the year following that, we dated from the January of 2017 to October of 2018. Again, the growth of that inspired. Right after that, we started doing this podcast. I started working on Devon's music. We released 6 songs. Uh, I released my air quote hit single, Fire Away, right? A lot of good things came from that. A lot of good things came from that energy and from living on my own, I think. Now I only say that just because of having the headspace to focus that energy and the lesser distractions. So yeah, I think it taught me drive. I was driven to a point that I'd never been driven to before. But it also, I think, hinders me in certain ways where I don't. It takes a lot for me to open up to a level of actually being in a relationship, like a deep relationship. It takes a lot for that. And so anyway, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but yes, I did learn I did learn more from that than I did any other relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel like it hinders you? I mean, I know you already said like you feel like you can't like fully take advantage of situations because you feel like when there's when there's the bad news coming essentially, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I guess I wanted to know like how sorry
You're all good, man.
how have you tried to kind of get past them? I guess.
Well, I actually don't think I really did. 2019, as I said, one of the best years of my life. Um, I and this is the counterintuitive thing about dating. You know, if you want somebody bad enough, you can't show it, right? That's kind of a weird thing. Now, I say that from a perspective. Now, yes, show it. I mean, show your emotions, but don't be like, "Hey, I want us to date like really bad. Like, I just think we'd work out so great." You know, like you can't do that. That's super unattractive. Um,
Well, yeah,
and
you come off needy.
yeah, and the thing about it is when you're not looking is when you always find people. So I went through 2019 doing my thing, man. And that was where the explosion happened for my live music career, in one fell swoop. Like I was playing gigs almost every week. I joined my good friend Brandon's band, District, to play bass. And we did, I joined a band in Kansas too. That all that year, did a whole bunch of stuff. It was awesome. And as far as dating goes, I dated I dated three or four different women um that year. I mean, it was short like dating. Um yeah, none of it was really really too serious. One of them kind of got there a little bit, but overall none of it was really too serious. And I'm not saying this to brag, but I think I was at least talking to 3 women for like half the year. Do you remember that?
I think I do.
Yeah, I'd be texting like 3 different girls, and it was like this random roulette wheel of women. Um, that I'd be texting like for half the year. I don't know how I sustained that. I don't know how I didn't lose my freaking mind, um, but I wasn't trying. I had no interest in dating. I actually remember having the thought that I was like, you know what, I might be single forever, and I was okay with that. I was okay with that. That was the crazy thing about it. I had no qualms about that. I was like, yeah, who cares? Maybe,
Mhm.
maybe I'll try again in my 30s and we'll see what happens. Um, and then I met this girl at the end of the year in October. October seems to be the time when everything happens. Um,
That's your time.
I guess maybe it was September, I guess, but um, yeah, I met her at a after a show. That was another person I forgot, Samantha Malillo. We were playing an acoustic thing with this guy that I actually just saw do a show. He lives in Texas now. His name's Joseph Neville. You guys should definitely check him out. He's getting pretty popular and he's very good. Look him up on Spotify. But anyway, we opened for him uh, at a coffee shop, and then my brother met us downtown, and it was a wild and crazy night. That's not worth explaining, but like we were at this taco shop that I have ranted and raved about. It's called Etc. I love it with my whole heart. Shout out to Etc. And that is where I met this girl. Because somebody else that I worked with was having a going away thing that night. It was like night 1 of 2. Who has 2 going away nights, right? Especially for themselves. Who does that? But I was gonna go the second night because I had a gig that night, obviously. But anyway, a couple of my coworkers came to this taco place, and I was like, "Oh, I know them." And I saw this short, athletic redhead, um, not tall, right? Walk in, and I think it's key at this point that I admit I have a huge thing for redheads. I mean, I it's like when you find that special weakness on Pokemon, right? Which I never thought I would compare the two of those things like that. But anyway, I yeah, I did. And I went over and I talked to her. And then I went the next night. I didn't really think I'd see her again, but I went the next night and she was there again. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try talking to her. So a friend of mine, coworker of mine, was actually hitting on her at that time. This is where that earlier story comes back into play. And I ended up winning that, I guess. I wasn't I wasn't competing. I was just, just started talking to her, and um yeah, I mean, we hit it off from there. Um yeah, man. I don't really know where to go from there. It was
Well, no, I mean it sounds interesting. I mean that kind of actually sounds like what a lot of people say. They tend to get into relationships when they're not seeking one, right?
yeah,
Or
I
I
don't know.
should say, they tend to get into like strong relationships when they're not really looking for one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Because for me at least, I always find that you're probably at your best when you're perfectly fine by yourself.
Yes.
When you're content and you are happy with who you are. You fully accepted yourself, and you're happy where you are. You're happy who you are, and you're just living life, right?
Sure.
And then the other person comes in to kind of be a part of it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you can't get into a relationship if you don't have yourself firmly grounded first.
Exactly.
You can't do that. And you have to have a solid foundation. You have to love yourself, I think, more than anything. Um, and just you know, be confident and comfortable in your own shoes. Uh, because no one's gonna provide that for you. It's really not even. I think you can have a relationship not being that way, and I think you can like go the distance not being that way.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not gonna be happy if you don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much a hindrance of your relationship life, but it's a hindrance of your own life, and that to me is more important, right? So, yeah, I don't know. One thing I was thinking about. So this is like a hypothetical, but like, what if you have that one person, right, that you miss very much, um, and you do feel comfortable in your own skin, right? Y'all like had a history, whatever, to some extent, and it didn't work out, and you do feel good with yourself, but you still miss that person. Is that a reflection on yourself where you stand in life? Just because you missed something that, you know, whatever reason didn't work out?
I don't think so. To be honest, I think you can still, because a lot of times, especially if it's someone that you have history with, right? Uh, you will always be attached to that person in some form or fashion, right? Because I feel like we as humans in general, and it's a survival thing, but we create attachments with each other, right?
Yeah.
In one way or another.
Well, yeah, I don't know how much we want to get into one of those ways, but I will say, dancing around the subject, I will say that, man, that is an undeniable connection. No matter what. And I don't understand the people who do firm handshakes firm handshakes with dozens and dozens of women. I cannot fathom that. Uh because of the emotion, you have to be emotionally dead inside, I feel like. But anyway, I digress. I interrupted you. What were you saying?
No worries, no worries. I mean, just going on that point. I mean, I feel like a lot of times that happens sometimes is because people are looking for something that they don't have, just like Christina's already saying.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit of, people are looking for something they don't have, and they don't understand that they don't have it, and they don't understand that they're looking for that. So they'll do those type of things, the firm handshakes, as you say.
Yeah, right.
With other people, just because they're trying to fill that void that's consistently there.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, Christina agrees. She says people are always looking for someone to complete them, but you should enter a relationship complete already. Yeah, and whatever your version of complete is what it is. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you feel good about yourself. Um, so yeah, I agree with that.
exactly. And so, yeah, just what I'm saying is when you form those attachments or whatever like that, it's bound to happen. It's just kind of what we do with those attachments or whatever like that that can either have a negative or a positive effect.
Yes, I agree.
On like what you might want to do or whatever. So, yeah. So going back to your relationship, right?
Yes.
In that relationship, what did you learn about yourself? What did you learn that either you need to do better, or what you're looking for or whatever like that?
Well, man,
That's a loaded question. There's a lot there.
there is. Um, I think in that one, I learned I am enough, right? Um, I learned a lot, I guess. I learned don't judge a book by its cover. I used to call her, and pardon my language, I used to call her a bad bitch. Okay? Because, you know, what she did outside, like she was a dancer, um, she was all these things, and just the way that she walked and held herself and all that kind of stuff. I thought, man, she's got an attitude, delayed delayed laugh. um I love it. It's like we have a crowd. It makes it fun. So anyway, yeah. So I the way she held herself and carried herself, and nothing against her, but she was not any of that. Which is a good thing. And that's kind of why I entertained it at first, because I wasn't looking for a relationship at that time. I thought, man, this would be fun, right? It ended up becoming more than fun. It became pretty serious, very serious. And so, um, the relationship that we had there was very self sustaining. I feel like it was very appreciative. I guess one thing I did learn is my tolerance for um, and this isn't an only child thing. Not that anyone on here really even knows I'm an only child, but like, um, like certain point, you can give too much attention to somebody else, you know, uh, even in just the course of a conversation, right? And so you have to be able to balance that. And that was, albeit that was a minor challenge, I should say. But I think there has to be equal, as close to equal as possible, 50-50, as much as you can in every aspect of a relationship, right? And so the reason I say that is because yeah, I think that and then the challenges, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. So the challenges of the pandemic, I think it impacted me more than I realized. Now, what a very positive thing with this person, and this is something I learned as well. Uh, I think a key is someone that you can have a day of doing nothing with, and or maybe a weekend, right? Let's call it a weekend. What'd you do this weekend? Nothing. Sit around, watched TV, made food, talked. But it was a great weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a key thing. And I think if you can say that with your significant other, that is a really good litmus test, um, for finding out if that's a good relationship or not, if you are in a good relationship or not. So I found out all those things, but I also found out how something with the gravity of this pandemic, how it impacted my job and all of that stuff impacted me. Um, I think I showed some rebellious behavior for a little while, not really understanding that it was at the time and where it was coming from. Um, and the impact that you can have on somebody else. You know, um, I I think one thing that I was not accustomed to was, a lot of the earlier relationships I had was how it was impacting me, right? But I reached a point in my life where it wasn't about that. Like I impact me. You know what I'm saying? Nobody else does. And therefore, I think I was more aware of and looking at how I impacted other people. Um, and that was hard, man. It was hard because I did some things I regret, but I mean, we all go through those phases in our life. Um, but I think that's the key thing is to kind of learn from it, and really, I gained a sense of self-awareness because of that, where I realize now more so how even slight actions can greatly impact somebody who has put their trust and faith in you. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a random assortment of thoughts with that. Um,
No, no,
yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're right. It does affect you, and or when you're in a relationship, it's hard to. And I always try to say this too, where I've always tried to go into a relationship this way, right? And of
hmm,
course, it's more of a utopian type of way to think of it, but it's like,
sure,
if you go into a relationship, if two people go into a relationship and they are instantly thinking about each other's needs, right?
yeah,
Technically, as I say, this is more of a utopian thought, right?
sure, sure,
Is technically if both people go in thinking about each other's needs, they come together, everybody's happy because one person is taking care of this other person is taking care of this other person, and so everybody you get this nice little perfect circle, right?
yeah,
Because everybody's helping each other out. I understand that that's not. always true, and that's most of the time it's not that, right? Because
Right.
sometimes it's you want to go into a relationship where it's 50-50, but sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's 70 for, 70-40 or 70-30,
That
whatever it
man,
is. But
110%. You gotta give it all.
but yeah, no, it's sometimes you're going into it with different amounts, and it's just because of external factors that are happening. And I
Yeah,
guess the big thing is to make sure that those external factors don't cause a negative impact on your own relationship.
for sure. Yeah, that is very important. So, I mean, I want to mention too another thing that this ties back in where I feel like the hurt from the relationship before it impacts my now, which are things that I need to address, and I wasn't realizing it in the moment. But I think back to the time that she came. She went to our good friend Jose's wedding with me, right? With us, and she literally hung out um, in the hotel room while you and I record our in person catch up. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Didn't have an issue with that, and that is awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, that's more than I would ask of somebody, quite honestly. And she did it like not didn't even make it an issue, didn't even make it a big deal, and I didn't appreciate that as much as I should have, right? So yeah, um, yeah, I guess it's really the last thing. You're Christina on that one. Christina says Dennis and I do nothing all the time. And it's amazing. Well, there you go. See, I just don't know why I be speaking to people's souls sometimes. Um, but yeah. So what's
yeah.
your?
I mean, or go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, what's your next question, man?
So I guess just doing a nice little. Now let's just go really far out. What have and this is where we can kind of go back to that dream girl status, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Out of all of this, what has kind of would have been big things that have just kind of been brought out from each of these experiences that have molded that dream girl for you, right?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. And actually, you know what? I don't know if you meant to do this, but like, we actually didn't touch on the most recent relationship. um, but
Oh man.
well, I don't really know what to say about that. I don't know. I still have it's still the whole situation is kind of fresh to me. Um, and I think that's an important thing to mention because it's a reminder to like check yourself in those moments. Check your emotions and check how you feel. Um, I see this person multiple times a week, um, and I don't care if it on good or bad terms, man. Like that puts hair on your chest. You know what I mean? But yeah, this would be, one of those situations where um, it's a learning experience. I guess that's really the best I can say about it. So, um, and I don't know, man. I'm stumbling around this one. What what do you want to know?
Uh, so I guess if I wanted to know for the last, for your most recent relationship, right, was um, what in that relationship made it, what made it what it was?
Well, I think that at that time when she and I started dating, I and I had this in a podcast episode around that time, but I had a panic attack not that long before that, right? And I know everybody reacts to it differently, but I can say that for somebody who hadn't really ever dealt with anything like that, and then that was a very bad one. That was a very bad one, and to have gone through that, it shook me up, and it really just, man, I just as far as that goes, I wish things were handled differently on several levels I won't get into here. that probably wouldn't have led up to having a panic attack in the first place. Um, and I wish too that I just hadn't had that happen. I think so. This goes back to the discussion that we were having about, you know, uh, feel complete on your own uh, before you look to somebody else. And I felt complete on my own leading up into having a panic attack, right? And it freaked me out. In hindsight, it freaked me out probably more than it should have. It will definitely more than it should have. But um, it kind of derailed me. So I felt like I had to keep this up, keep this, this John. I don't want to say alpha, but because I don't want to sound like a douche.
You putting on airs, right? Putting on personas to try to keep yourself um, to make people feel that you're the same person, even though you've had a panic attack, even though that panic attack has changed who you are.
Yeah, well, and it didn't change who I am. It just, it kind of knocked me off my path for a second, right? I think that's, but yes, no, you're exactly right. I was essentially putting on airs to make it seem like nothing had changed. Um, and I think what happened was I tried so hard and that it made it look, I pushed too hard, perhaps, and I think inadvertently I ended up looking at it as a referendum of where I was, right? Well, as long as this is going well, I guess I'm doing fine, right? And the funny thing is, in the month or so that it's ended and things have slowed down, obviously, I've realized, well, that was dumb. That was really dumb to ever think that. And like, obviously, deep down, I knew better, but I just didn't stop approaching it that way. So, it was really, you can't change, you can't go back in time, but it's one of those things where you just wonder, like, what would that have been like had I been in a better place, like I am now, like I was then. You know what I mean? What would that have been like? And so that's really the best thing I can say about it. And probably the biggest takeaway is just be yourself. You know?
Well, do you feel like, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good.
Do you feel like you needed to be in that relationship to be able to see that? Do you feel like you wouldn't have been able to see it before?
Uh,
You had a hard time.
I don't know. You know, that's a tough one. I definitely learned it in a different way, having been in that relationship. Did I need to figure that out? Probably not. Probably not. But it put it in a different perspective for me because I'm really not an over trier when it comes to relationships. I felt like I had a pretty good balance on that. But what I do think is that this whole series of events is, for whatever reason, happening to make me a better version of me. I do think that. Um, so yeah, you know, it's kind of one of those, you think things are going well for a while situations, and then they're not, for one reason or another. And um, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm really saying anything productive here. I just,
No.
I,
I get what you're saying.
yeah,
It's a hard question, right? It's a hard question to ask, especially because it's so new, right? I feel like it's one of those that we may have to touch upon a little later on, right?
maybe so. Yeah, yeah, maybe so. Because the thing is that um, there is an element of it to me where it's like, you wonder how that would have been different, how things would have been handled differently, if because I did think while I was in that relationship, I thought, I think there has to be a step taken, or maybe the better way to phrase it is this: like, I'd be back on my path if I weren't concerned about this relationship at the same time. You know what I mean? Um, and I did have that thought. I had that thought a lot, and of course, there's no clean way to be like, hey, let's break this off, and then let's come back at it later. you know, like there's no clean way to do that, and so I just tried to power through, and then you're left kind of wondering, what if? I guess, you know.
No, I get that. I get that. Like I said, it's one of those things that we'll probably need to eventually, re-go back and stuff because you're still working through that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
In the growing process.
yeah,
Right? So,
yeah, yeah.
so now going back to the question that I asked you a little bit before was, out of all of these experiences, right? What are some of the, I'm going to say like top five qualities, right? Top five qualities that you feel that you're going to be looking for, um, you know, in the next relationship that we go for or whatever.
Okay. Hmm.
That dream girl status.
Okay, so should we compare that to my what I wrote down from 2015?
Yeah.
Okay, because you were the one that inspired that. You said,
Mm-hmm.
I do remember this. So I had like 4 months removed from that first main relationship I had, and you said write down a list of what you look for in a dream girl, right? I think it'll be pretty interesting to compare based off of recent dating experience, right? But let's see, top five.
Yeah, let's see if old John knew what
New John would want,
New
right?
John knew. Yeah, exactly.
Top five would be a godly heart, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes beyond just having faith, being a Christian, but it's living it, right? And so that's what I mean by a godly heart is showing that faith on a daily basis. And it's easier said than done, but I think it's way simpler than it sounds too. Whereas even you calling me a couple of weeks ago and just asking me how I'm doing, um, that's a godly heart. You know what I mean? So those type of things. So godly heart, um, a man, it's hard to like put these intangible. It's hard to put them in tangible terms because you can say like a calm spirit, but what does that mean? It's gonna mean something different to me than it is to you. Um, but yeah, I would say probably a good sense of humor. Um, and I'm not even saying like just laugh at my jokes. I'm just saying like laugh. You know what I mean? Like laugh. And so,
You don't want a robot.
right, yeah, yeah. Someone who's driven. Um, but so this is actually something I've been thinking about. Driven, but willing to adapt. You know,
Mm.
I think sometimes people can get so driven and so focused on their goal, um, that they expect whoever they let into their life, relationship wise, to just go along with it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we live in a culture right now where, and I was actually talking with our good friend Daniel Garrett about this today. He brought it up, but he was talking about, he was basically comparing our culture now to how it was like 5 years ago. And our culture now is very much yourself first, put yourself first, be selfish. And there's nothing wrong with putting yourself first, but I think sometimes that can get misconstrued, right? And so if you are falling into a romantic relationship with somebody, you have to understand that you're going to have to make changes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have to be mature about what you want and get into a relationship in the first place. So let's take it. I don't know. I'll give you an example of like people who move across the country for their jobs, right? And they know they're going to move across the country for their jobs, and they get into a relationship, and then they think, well, you know what? This person doesn't want to move across the country, so this is over, I guess, right? Stuff like that. I haven't experienced that personally, but I'm just throwing it out there as an example that you know I think people do that. I think people do that a lot where um, they put themselves first too much. So driven, and it's based off of being driven for something. So driven but willing to adapt, right? Godly heart, um, someone who's kind, which again I think is something different from a godly heart. But and then a good sense of humor. So we touched on that. Um,
So we've got driven, we've got godly heart. Is that
good sense of humor,
it? Oh, yeah, good system of humor.
kind,
Like, no robots.
right?
Kind. So what is that? That's four.
I don't know if I should count kind. It's pretty similar to godly heart. So let me come up with two more. I would say willingness to learn, right? Um, because anybody who has a mindset where they want to continue learning throughout their life, I think that mindset benefits you in so many things outside of that, right? So yeah, I think that's a big thing is having that willingness to learn and expand your mind. Um, and then probably for me, just somebody who's creative, you know, that would be a really like golden girl for me, like somebody who's creative, because they're gonna appreciate anything, anything, literally anything. It does not have to be music, but the thing is, that's gonna be scratching my back. I'm gonna be scratching her back because when you're creative in something, you appreciate other people's creativity. If you're serious about your creativity, right? You appreciate other people's creativity. And so someone truly understanding me on that level, it's something I've gotten close to before, but I don't know if I've ever fully experienced that. Um, so yeah, I would say those five things, man. Uh, uh, Godly heart, willingness to learn, driven but willing to adapt, good sense of humor, and creative. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good lesson.
Now, I mean, obviously there are other things like
Of course, there's tons of other things.
yeah, like wanting to have a family or whatever, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
those are the things that stand out the most.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I guess now let's just check to see what
All right.
old John is going on.
Yeah.
What was he looking at?
So yeah.
See if your views are still there.
So
If they've changed or progressed or grown or whatever like
let's
that.
put this up on the camera here. So this is interesting. Denison asked me to make a physical list and a personal list, right? So, so the physical. This is actually pretty freaking funny. Physically, I want somebody fairly tall. Clearly, I didn't follow through on that one. I don't even know what would qualify as fairly tall anymore. Fairly athletic build. I wasn't looking for like, what was that? Oh my gosh, she used to do the Nutrisystem ads. Um, I'm not looking for her, but fairly athletic build. Nice hair. Now, that sounds weird out of context, but I'll tell you straight up, every girl I've dated has nice hair, and it's not a thing I look for. It's just as like I see this nice hair, and then I'm like, damn, she's good looking. Let me hit that up. Like it's a subconscious thing, you know what I mean? It's not even like the body, the face, the booty or whatever. Like it's none of that. It's like the hair catches me first. It's so stupid. I don't know why that happens. I said beautiful smile on the whole face, probably because smile is the window to the soul, right? Um, I put, I put, I know what that laugh was. Uh, I put no arm hair. It's actually a very real reason I put that on here too, but we're not going to talk about that. Um, Okay, so that's changed too. I should clarify that. Everybody has minimal arm hair on their arms. I'm just not. I don't want my girl to have more arm hair than I do, right? Like, that's all I'm saying. So, okay. So the more serious stuff. Christian. There's more than five here, but Christian.
Okay, well, no, but
Yeah, I'll fly through them. Christian, kind-hearted. So kind of one of the same. Easy to talk to slash with. I didn't mention that because I just think that's a given nowadays. That you gotta have that. So I mean, that goes without saying in my mind. Understanding and supportive. I think that coincides with a little bit of the creativity side. I don't want somebody that I would actually like. They're listed like if you listed job skills and they're like understanding, supportive, or no, like how about maybe in this case, if you listed you're creative, then I would know she will be understanding and supportive of my creativity. You understand what I'm saying? So I probably wouldn't list it the same way, but it's a similar thought process. Driven to her own goals. I remember at that time I knew some women that weren't driven at all, but we were much younger back then. Um, Confident, obviously, gotta have confidence in life. I don't think you can be driven without being confident, and I don't think you can be in a relationship without a level of confidence as well. Not a fruitful one. Good sense of humor, open. Because communication, as I said at the beginning of this episode, trust and communication is key. So you want to be open, intelligent. So that goes with the willingness to learn. Loving, obviously. It's, responsible. Okay, this is having a sense of maturity. I think, which most of the time that's much easier to find nowadays than it was before when we were younger. A good sense of style. But for real, actually, you know what? That style can be bought from Target or Kohl's or whatever. I don't care. But as long as you can match up an outfit, like that's kind of important. Um, Not to get all metro with it, but like I don't want to put in more thought in my outfits than my girl does. You know what I'm saying? Like it can be equal. It can be equal. But I'm not trying to be over here like, wearing some clean ass Catchup podcast merch and she's just wearing sweatshirt. But anyway, and then outgoing and willing to try new things, which is a very important thing to me too. I don't like just routine when it comes to having fun and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was the list, man. 2015, March 2015 to now, almost 6 years later, and it's much of the same stuff.
yeah, man. So it seems like you're still looking for pretty much the same person, just
Priority.
per- personality is what we're going for.
Yeah, the body's a little different.
Yeah, but I mean, you're mainly looking for the same stuff. It's just like I was saying, maybe we got more defined.
Yeah, more defined, more refined. I would say that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the qualities are mostly the same. I just look at them in a different perspective, and B, articulate them differently. It would be more refined. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I would look for those same qualities, but in a different order, different priority order for me. What about you, man? Is that fair to ask with your girlfriend in the crowd?
Yeah,
Top five?
yeah, no, I think so. I think so. Um, let's see, top five.
Top five, top five, top five.
Um, I mean, I would say that most of my views are about the same, but it's a God fearing, caring heart. I know we're already kind of the same deal, but
Yeah.
let me think. And I think my camera may die on this, so I'm gonna strike a pose.
All right.
But no, yeah, God fearing, caring heart, fun to be around, which is not really helpful. But to be honest, it would probably be more if I wanted to be more specific. It would someone who pushes me to be myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's a good one. I like that.
and then let's see. Always supportive. You know, someone who's my best cheerleader.
Yeah.
And then let's see, what's the last one? Hmm. You know, it's always so hard.
It is, man. It's
But
not easy to choose.
let's see. Oh yeah, and then my camera died.
Oh, you're all good, man. We're about to
um,
wrap this bad boy up anyway.
let's see. Having such a hard time pinning down that last one.
I know, man. I know. Um, it's a tough one. I'm not gonna lie.
It is. It is. I would probably say, I guess, giving the spirit.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, yeah, man. I get all that. I mean, those are all qualities that would make a great person, not to mention a great partner, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, it's interesting to hear our top five things, man. I think you got those bases covered. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. It's been a good discussion. I don't know. Do you have anything else that you wanted to ask?
No, man. No, man. It's been a great discussion, and I feel like this is, it's always a never-ending topic, right? Because I feel like there's some stuff that we can take away from this episode and bring into another one or whatever like that. Who knows? Maybe next time we'll have like a guest on.
Dude, yeah. Oh man, I would love that.
And I think that'd be kind of cool because we get like a whole other person's perspective and just a whole different form of dialogue. Plus, we can come back to your question.
Of
Uh, the or not really question, but what you learned, I guess. Yeah, what you learned from your most recent relationship, and and how it may have changed you, or what happened.
Yep. No, I think that perspective will change. Yeah. Maybe we just bring our exes on and have it like hash it out on the podcast too. There's nothing to bring out truth like an audience in real time, you know? So
No, no, that's true. That's very true. Oh man, boy, would that be interesting.
Oh yeah, yes. I think we should probably not do that, but but yeah, man. So no, this was a good discussion, and I appreciate you taking the lead and kind of letting me ramble because there's a lot, um,
Oh no.
a lot of things, but I can't say by any stretch that's been bad. And I think that is the thing I want to leave y'all with before we sign off of this is that you gotta take the good with the bad, but you gotta focus on the good. The good is the most important part. And would I trade any of the experiences that I've had? Maybe parts of them, but overall, no. I mean, they made me who I am, you know. And and as long as you can be proud of who you are, that's all that matters. So, yeah, it's been an interesting ride. I know we didn't have like a set focus on this episode, but I think the overall focus, the overall goal was to convey how these relationships impact your life, how to be aware of that, how to make the most of it. Because again, I was rarely at a more productive point in my life than following a breakup. And so how do you keep that energy going? Forward. Maybe that's something we can talk about another time. Um, but yeah, so that's we touched on a lot of good stuff here. I'm glad that we discussed it all. So
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled that we we discussed this because I feel like it worked out really well.
Yes.
I feel like it was a really good, just a really good, little dialogue that we had.
I agree.
And
So
I hope that our listeners kind of grabbed a bunch as well from it.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. So yeah, man, I think it's time we bounce out of here. And we're gonna get these technical difficulties figured out so they don't happen again. But we will, man. But yeah, glad we had Christina jumping in on the discussion as well. I made it a little more fun having your girlfriend on here, man. But yeah, remember to leave us a rating review. Let us know how you liked this episode, what you liked, what you disliked. Let us know. We want to keep growing, and we want other people to see this thing. Jump onto this podcast and get involved in the discussion. Follow us on Facebook. That's where we did the live stream. That's where we'll continue to do the live streams. And get you some good clean Catchup podcast merch, as I'm wearing right now. At our website, check it out, man. We got good stuff, good price, good quality, and you can rep the show in your own way. So yeah, with that said, we'll be back next week with regularly scheduled content. We're going to be getting next week might be the week, man. It might be the week that we get our good friend Aaron Wandra on the show. I know. I can't wait. So we'll set that up. But until then, thank you for catching up with us. And we'll catch up with you next week.